taking advantage today. I wasn't actually planning to do another video so soon, but since the weather is so nice, I thought this is a good day for painting. There's wind, breezy, but it's sunny and dry, and it's good for painting. I'm going to show you exactly what I've just been doing at the front, and then showing you a couple of bits and pieces. Now, what I've been doing is preparing this front cross member. As you can see, we've just gone over in white primer. Yes, I haven't bothered to remove those radiator slat things. I've got to be honest with you, it will be done in situ. Those clips as well, I'll just remove the paint from them. I couldn't remove them. They literally, one of them came out, but the rest of them just wanted to snap. So I'm just going to clean all that up after I've done all the paint work. But I've just been going round with some actual white primer that I had left over. I don't know how I had this. I was so surprised I had it. You're supposed to use it with like an adhesion promoter, but I think it's Halford's trying to get more money from you. And thanks, Rob. This has come in use, definitely. Ford still have diamond white on the shelf. It's just one of those generic Ford colours. But I have been going over and I've been doing some wet sanding, and I tell you what, it has reduced some of the rust spots completely. Some of the spots were really bad. I've still got to go underneath the battery tray because it's quite dirty underneath there and I can't really see. So much so I prefer it to be removable, but I'm not really going to do too much to this at this stage because, quite frankly, it's a good tool tray apart from the holes. We'll gloss over that. But all I've been doing is going over the entire front of the car, including, if I just get my camera down there as well. Okay, now it's not the most brilliant job. Okay, you can see a bit of reaction work. That's the worst area. But to be honest with you, most of this area you're not going to see. It's underneath the radiator, but at least I know that I've protected it. And what I am going to do at some point later today is I'm going to mask up the bottom here, okay, all the way around, and I'm just going to go down the bottom in stone chip. Now, from the factory, they just literally, I think this is just primer or overspray, because all they did is they put this stone chip grey paint on, and then the bottom side is just plain. Well, what I'm going to do, I'm going to finish the job for them. I'm also going to go down the bottom of the inner cross member because that's also been done as well. So I'm going to do both pieces in stone chip. So I'm going to mask off down here. We've had a bit of gunge. Yeah, I was actually doing a bit of hosing down the one day, and I just stuck the hose into the engine and more water came out the water pump. It was absolutely disgusting. It's like green gunge. I feel like doing it again, to be fair, to see if I can disturb some more, but oh my God. I've put some new cardboard down for the gearbox and already it's starting to spit. Oh my God, I've only put it down about a minute ago. That gearbox is still spitting. It's unbelievable. So really, I'm just going to be doing a load of masking up around here. But what we can do is we can take this blasted heat box off. Now, what I'm going to do, there's two bolts. They look like 10 mils. I'll work that out in a second. But we've got the heater resistor pack just here. So I think it's just a case of twiddling this off. Yeah, I've got a feeling it's going to be... I think someone snapped this clip, you know. But we've got this... Right, we've got that there. Okay, so remember, Andrew, this brown wire goes into this sort of loom here. I don't know what this is about. Let's get this loom out this clip. Okay, so we can actually see. Oh, yeah. Okay. Right, so we've released the brown wire, which is like a live. Trying to twiddle this off. Oh, come on. Well, it's actually just come off. It's just held onto the side here with these two clips. I don't really want it connected. Let me just do this off camera. You just got to pull this off and pull this red connector off. Right, we managed to pull this off. God, this red lead was really tight. But yeah, this heater resistor needs a bit of wire brushing to the actual connectors. But overall, it doesn't look too bad. I've got a parts number in case I get a bit kabuzzled. Is that a word? Right, let's have a go. We've got a 13mm socket. Oh, that was quite easy. I've got to go really slowly, guys, because remember, we don't want another snapping subject, and this is in an area of the car that, well, you know. Right, there we go. Those two are off. Now, I don't know if there's anything else holding this on. Oh, no, it's just hold on with a seal. Oh. Right. Get these stupid wires out the way. Okay. I've just broken the seal. Right, this might take a bit of manoeuvring, and I don't really want to be scratching. There we go. Oh, oh dear. Well, that can't help. There's tons of leaves in there. Right, let me just inspect that in a second. I might have to get the vacuum out on this. Yeah, you got a foam flap, and then you got all this rubbish. Oh my God. Jesus Christ. Right, I have to get my vacuum. So before I switch on, that is the heater matrix, because those two pipes go in. This is actually the heater matrix itself. Oh, gosh, I've got to be careful. Very, very careful. Right, that is very clean. There has been some slight, something has hit the matrix, but it looks okay to me. It's just a bit of debris stuck in there, to be fair. But try and get that leaf out. There we go. Right, I'm just going to give this housing just a little bit of a clean. But my God, how rudimentary is that? Just just clean around the edges. Make sure much of this rubbish is gone as possible. That is now squeaky clean. I'd like to say the same for this. The polystyrene seal around the edges is okay, but I'll just show you this in not so many terms. This is the sound we're getting from the car. Yeah, the bearing's gone in that fan. The fan needs replacing. Okay, right, so it looks like the only way we're getting this off is these two straps, one there and one there. What I really wanted to say is actually is that I'm looking rather rough. Yeah, been a rough few days, just about, as usual for everybody else. I just wanted to say thank you for supporting me with all these videos. And I've just literally broke a clip. Now that actually, these clips, they're actually a friction fit on the side, so don't lose that. That's going to be a difficult place. I'll put it in the tray. I'm not going to lose it there. Lovely. Yeah, and I've had a lot of good positive comments about Project Ruby, as I would imagine. I had to go down one route. It's either the Rover route or the Ford route. That's my channel. Or the Austin Rover-ish, because there is one car that I'd like to get my hands on. I think I made it very, very obvious that I want a Maestro at some point. So, yeah, it's one of those nostalgia trips that I've got to take. This isn't a car full of nostalgia, because no one in my family has ever owned a Mark III Fiesta. In fact, my family were pretty much Metros, so you'd have thought I'd have gone down that route. Truth is, about Metros, when I looked into way more of what my budget was anyway, I'd be looking at a Metro with a shot hydrogas system, and there's no point in buying a Metro if you're not going to get a full whack of what the car should feel like. And most of them are knackered hydrogas spheres that don't leak. They're pumped up to the right height, but the ride is like rock hard because there's no gas in there no more. And they need refurbishing. I mean, that's going to be 800 to £1,000. That's beyond rust or anything else. That's beyond anything else. And I just think this car appealed because suspension wise there's nothing to them. Yes, they're not as sophisticated as Metros, but I think on a car this age, that's the attraction, simplicity. And that's what this car has been since I got it off and started stripping it down. So simple, this car. So that's why I didn't go down that route. Not to say I won't ever go down that route. I have no idea where that clip has just gone. Bingo. Well done. Well, that clip has gone into infinity. The truth is, I don't think it really, this box doesn't need them clips. I think personally I'll get another heater, possibly with this box anyway, because most people can't be bothered taking these apart. They'll literally just take it off in the scrapyard, 2 bolts, take it out and put it in the scraps, so or put it in the shed. So I don't really care too much about this whole thing, but we'll just take this off. And it's still, to be fair, even though it's got the clip on it, it's still hinged in. Good grief. Oh, that took some strength. See, don't need the clips. It's one of those things that just isn't necessary. Right, we've got the fan motor assembly in here that sits in here. Now, I've been told that it's clipped in a certain way. Let me just consult the Haynes Book of Lies again. I haven't actually even looked. I just turned the camera off. Had a little visual look myself to see if there's anything obvious. If I can't see anything obvious, Haynes manual. I have though. It's really simple. On the back side, there's a clip that sticks out there. You just got to put your screwdriver in and leer it out, because it's basically a clip that goes there and there. But if you look at this, I'm not joking you. Trying to keep it still for you. It's just all over the place. The bearing's completely gone in this motor. And no, I can't actually use this motor out of a Mark IV. I think that's a completely different blower system. So no, I have to get one from a Mark III. So that means I've got to go down the braking route. Okay, fun times, fun times. Let's just a screwdriver and leer this out. There we go. Here that clip go, so take that off. So that is the clip. And the whole thing should just come straight out. Yeah, so we'll clean the box up. And this is the knackered. There's nothing you can do with that. The bearing is just completely gone. What make is this? Maybe it's just a Ford make. Oh yeah, it's just Ford's own make. I've got a parts number. I'll clean the parts number up and have a look to see if I can find anything online. And I'll just go for Mark III's braking. There's plenty of them. I can't believe the amount of Mark III's that are up for braking. It's ridiculous. Honest to God, that people don't look after these cars enough. Honest to God. Right, I'm not going to even bother cleaning this up. I'm just going to get the worst of it off. And then there. Right, we've got a parts number. Oh, it's a Bosch product. Nah, it's a Bosch fan. Okay. Right, okay. I'll do some research. That's for later. Yeah, I'll just give this a clean up off camera, and I'll have to stick it back in because we've got a bit of a hole. Well, to be fair, we've got a hole anyway. Right, okay. What I'm going to have to do then is I'm going to have to put a piece of cardboard over there, even though the rain isn't going to get in this because there's a car cover on there. I'm going to just stick something over the top. All these brackets and clips. Clip there, got a bracket there, so take all this back in the house. What I want to do now is I'm going to take you inside because I'm going to be painting. I'm going to be coming in and out and doing a load of painting, okay, like how it is with paintwork. But I'm going to take you inside now and show you the Dizzy and the alternator. We know that I completely ballsed up the starter motor. I wasn't to know. So I've got a brand new starter motor coming for this thing. As you know, with aftermarket starter motors, they either work or they don't work, or they work for a short time, then they pack up. Aftermarket ones I've avoided. I've tried to rebuild the original ones, but this one cannot be rebuilt. I could have a look at other Mark III Fiestas and see what starter motors they've got, if there's any for braking. The truth is, I've got to buy the alternator, then I've got to refurb it in the exact same way. And do you know what? I don't want to be going down that side. It's possible that that starter motor was unique to the CTX, but according to the aftermarket manufacturers, every single type of starter motor on a CVH will fit and do absolutely fine. So I'm not so concerned about that. But the alternator, we're going to have a look at the regulator, and the Dizzy, we're just going to split it apart, give it a bit of a clean, and I'll show you what's what. Anyway, let's go in. Right, hopefully you can see me relatively so. Now, the main thing is, we've got a couple of bits that I just want to go over. The paint is drying, and I will show you the Dizzy. Now, the Dizzy, I will point it this way. Before I take these leads off, mark where the leads go. Now, I know for a fact that this Dizzy sits like this, with this electronic module at the top. And what we have here, so I know, number one is facing towards the engine. Number trying to remember now. Number one and number two are on the top, so take them off. Number one towards the front, number two towards the heater. So Andrew, if you've forgotten, refer back to this. The king lead, which goes in the middle. That's your king lead. That goes to the coil. And then at the bottom, we have number three towards the front. Number four towards the heater. There you go. Now all these HT leads, I've got to be honest, I'd give these a bit of a clean up. I'll probably go over them again, but they are genuine Ford items, and do you know what? They feel flexible. HT leads, they get a bit crunchy when they get a bit old, but there's no sign that these are bad on the connectors. There is a resistance check you can do, and I'm going to clean these up individually off camera. Right, we now have the Dizzy unit. Now, this was a way that cars used for ignition systems since the 1910s, 1920s maybe. I think a lot of cars originally, and still some certain European, maybe Polish cars, actually have individual coils. So this eliminates the need for one coil per cylinder. So a lot of two-stroke European cars back in the 60s, 70s, you know, the sort of Soviet Union sort of cars, they have two cylinders or maybe three, but they've also got one coil per cylinder. So that's three of them coils, those electronic coils, on the side running to their individual cylinder. Ridiculous, takes up a huge amount of space, and it's not necessary. All you need is one coil that is distributed in terms of its electricity to individual cylinders, well, individual plugs I should say, and that's the result of this. It's simple as that. Now, the way a Dizzy works, it's in two halves, okay? It's in two halves. Distributors, by the way, went the way of the wind kind of in the 80s, 90s, well, particularly the 90s, with electronic ECU control and coil packs as such. So coil packs are probably two packs, so two coils, so one for 1 and 2 and 2 for 3 and 4, whatever, that are joined together. Some of them are like on the K series where they're separate, or on the Focus Mark 1 it's one complete unit. But back in the day, this was the way of the wind before ECUs and electronic control. They're very simple. They're very simple, and there's not many things that go wrong with them. Usually the things that wear out is the cap and the rotor arm, and we've got new ones of that coming already. In fact, I've got some new ones sitting over here. mainly because on inspection I wasn't quite as happy as what I would like to be with this sort of thing. But this is powered by a coil, okay? It is an electronic coil. The one over there I'm going to keep as a spare is just out of resistance, probably getting on a bit. That's it. It is probably quite old looking at it. I don't think it's the original though, but it could be, for all I know. So that's been replaced. The coils used in these are 12-volt coils, okay? It is a 12-volt coil ignition system. If you have a car with a ballast resistor, okay, you have a 9-volt coil. Why? Because the ballast resistor basically drops the ignition feed to points ignition. This hasn't got points. There's no points in this. It is almost very basic form of a Hall effect sensor with a magnet, a coil, and a pickup, and it spikes this, and this spikes the primary circuit in the coil to tell it drop the primary circuit, cut the power, and then the coil has to release its full whack of energy to the center, the king lead, through the center diode, and then distributed to all 4 plugs via the rotor arm. Very simple. I'll show you that in more detail in a second. But the coil that I've just replaced, well, the essential principle is that on a ballast resistor system, when you start the car, the full 12 volts go through to the starter motor, okay? And just periodically, there's 12 volts that goes through the coil to the plugs just to get it started. Then the ballast resistor kicks in. The coil, the starter motor stops working. So the 12-volt feed is then cut straight away. And that 12-volt feed cuts to 9 volts because points, they don't work well with 12 volts. Believe it or not, points ignition systems, where it's literally contact breaker points like I explained before, they mechanical, they open and close, they've got 2 faces that wear out. You have to check them with a feeler gauge just to make sure they're in a correct length. They wear out, but they will not take 12 volts. And I had a problem with my P6 years ago where I actually fitted a pair of points just to see what it would be like versus electronic ignition. And I found out that the ballast resistor in that car, which was, unfortunately, it's not a module. Some cars it's a module, some cars it's not. It's in the loom. And in the P6 it's part of the main starting loom. So I had this issue where the points would burn out because the points was receiving 12 volts constantly. Why? The ballast resistor, I think, was just allowing too much electricity through. I'm pretty sure about that. I was convinced that it had collapsed, but then if it collapsed, there'd be no voltage at all. But for some reason in that car, I was getting 12 volts at the points. That shouldn't have been the case. It burnt the points out. They literally wore away even quicker, and I lost power, cut out, and had to revert to electronic ignition, which is why I champion such things in such cars. And the electronic ignition that you can get for a lot of classic cars to replace your points is very similar to this system. Very, very similar indeed. This sort of Hall effect style technology has been around a long, long time. But obviously in this situation, points has been replaced with this Hall effect system, which requires 12 volts. The ballast resistor, there is no ballast. Any sort of ballast resisting or whatever you want to call it, it's done via that. That does it for you. It is the most basic form of a computer ECU module. Very, very basic indeed. And this has been replaced. This is not the original. Now I have bought a new ignition coil, £12. I thought it was worth a punt because it's new old stock and I prefer new old stock stuff. I know people that put points on their cars, get the old set of points. The new Lucas stuff, it's absolutely dreadful, awful stuff. Intermotor, that's a name that I really am confident in terms of ignition parts. I've got a new Intermotor rotor arm and distributor cap. So the ones on here, I'm going to show you in a second, I'm not too happy with, but they're okay. They're okay to go in the boot. But this is the parts number. So electronic ignition coil, because it is electronic, 12 volts, that's what they call electronic. Although it's still got oil in it. It's not one of these dry coils. By the way, these coils, they have oil in them to keep the primary windings really cool. This was something else. I had to buy it because of the way it looked. I know you're only going to see the front bit of it, but oh my God, that is so cool. I love that. I just love the pattern. I could put that on the shelf and just have it as an ornament. That is so colourful. When did we go back to blacks and silvers when you can have blue, yellow and red? I just think that is so cool. Yeah, I like that. Made in England as well. And it has got some decent oil in it. And the resistance is perfect in this. So, yeah, this is definitely staying. And it's going to go on the car and it's going to work very well. Anyway, let's get into this. There's two halves of this, okay? Now we've got the dog drive that drives the whole thing. Now, I've just moved this out of position. Now, to get this line back into the car, and I will explain this, the rotor arm in there has to point to HT lead number 4, or the number 1 for HT lead, which will be this one. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 1. Simple as. Now, we've got, instead of clips on this, we've got 2 bolts that hold the cap down. And they are, I believe, yeah, they're 7mm bolts. So I'm just going to whack this off. They are just captive, these. They're just completely captive. Now, there's a couple of things you need to watch out for with these. Namely, cracking. You get this on the newer ones, which is why I think I would like to keep this as a spare. So, take the cap off. And we are faced with this. So basically, electricity comes from the coil through the king lead through this center electrode, okay? And it is distributed by the rotor arm that I'm going to show you in a second to these 4 points. Now sometimes this is spring loaded in the middle. I can feel that. But some of them are spring loaded on some distributor caps, certain distributors. I don't like the fact that there's actually sediment. If you look at this, there's actually sediment around. There's actually been quite a bit of wear for a start, and there's sediment all over the place. I don't like that. I looked at that and thought, might be working, but that's only good as a spare, as an emergency spare. I'm not happy with that. And the way the electricity is distributed around, as I said, is a rotor arm, which just sits here. Now, most people think, whoa, hold on, where's all your points and your base plate? There isn't, because it's electronic. This is the difference between points and electronic distributors. All the gubbins is inside this bit here, okay? The trigger cord, everything. It's actually kind of solid state. You can't mess with it. But there's really nothing to go wrong because it is a simple trigger coil and a magnet. They never go wrong. It's as simple as that. They literally work off very basic form of electricity. I'm just watching my car cover to make sure it's not blowing away. It's a bit windy today. But this rotor arm does not look in the best shape. And I'm just going to take it off the shaft. Remember, as this spins, this is spinning round. Okay? And I'll just take it off the shaft. Okay? Now this has got a tip. Okay? This tip is dirty. It's actually not very good. I don't like that at all. That's dirty for a start, and that would need cleaning up anyway. But basically, electricity, it will go through there and spike to the end plate. And that's where electricity gets transferred from the king lead through the center electrode to the outer ones as it's spinning round. Simple as that. That is basically this, and this cap is how you can have one of these for 4 cylinders to fire 4 plugs. It's as simple as. This is going to be replaced as well because I'm not happy with that either. Now, really, all we've got is the rest of the gubbins. Now, we have something called a vacuum advance, but I'm just going to take the electronic module. Now, this electronic module, I'll tell you something. This isn't a 5mm or 6mm. I had to use a 732 Imperial nut They're almost like security nuts. I've had to use a 732 Imperial to get these off. I don't understand what this is about. In fact, no, I've got a feeling that is actually the wrong one. We'll find out in a second. By the way, there is a sleeve that goes over the actual cap. So you put this over, then you put your HT leads on. I just took it off to clean it up. It's a very weird size. I've had to get a 5.5. I thought, now this 732, I know what this is for, and I'll be coming to that in a second. 5.5, which I had in my spare socket set, but my God, it's a weird size. Not even my Halfords Advanced have got this sort of size. So just take the nuts off. Now, there is supposedly, you're supposed to put heat shrink down on this when you put it down. I might actually get some heat shrink. But for now, I'm just going to take this off. And this is why I know it's been replaced, because there's no heat shrink at the bottom. And this is definitely not the original, but it's the original parts number. Now you just pull it up. There we go. And it will just come off its two-pronged connector, okay? There should be some heat sink at the bottom. So this is, well, without this, you're not starting the car. It's a good way of immobilising the car, though. We've got an electrical connector with a seal there, and just got a bit of a hole there. Now, what we need to do now is take off these two screws. So there's actually one, actually there's three. 1, 2, 3. And then the main body will separate from the bottom side. Now I've got a feeling, yeah, these are 5.5s as well. Absolutely ridiculous. But in the bottom of a distributor, you will have some bob weights. We call them centrifugal weights, but people know them as bob weights. What happens when you accelerate is those bob weights move outwards, and it forces, in this case, it would force the trigger wheel away from the actual trigger coil. Making sure that basically the timing is advanced when you accelerate down the road, because when you put your foot on the gas, your timing needs to go forward. The normal timing at idle is usually something like 5 to 10 before top dead center. And remember, we're talking about when the piston gets to its top of its compression stroke, okay? But the spark needs to ignite before that. So think about it as a clock. 12 o'clock is when the piston hits the top of its combustion stroke. Most cars, the spark is ignited at 10 degrees before that time. 10 degrees, which on this clock is 10 o'clock. So think about it. So the spark happens at 10 o'clock, okay? But at 12 o'clock is when the piston hits the top. If that spark happens too late, let's say 5 to, basically 5 to 12, if that happens, the ignition it's not going to produce as big an explosion. If it's too advanced, if it's, let's say, 11:45, 9 o'clock or whatever, that's too advanced. That would mean pre-detonation, i.e. you're getting an explosion before the piston gets to the top. That's bad for cars. Pinking or pre-detonation, whatever you want to call it, knocking, you'll hear it. It's nasty and it's bad for engines. That's why it's really critical to get the engine timing exact right. In this particular car, 8 degrees was what was set from the factory. And believe it or not, there is actually a mark. There is actually a mark there, stamped in the factory, and there's a mark on the block, so I can get the ignition timing back to base. But that's with standard fuel. I'm going to come to that when I do the ignition timing. I'm going to be messing around with it a little bit, and I'll show you how to do it. But essentially, when you're driving down the road, the timing has to advance. We have to have, like, it can't be at 10 to. It must be at 1/4 to or 20 to, let's say, 20 to 12. The timing must be that advanced, depending on how fast you're going. And these bob weights make that advancement happen by bringing the trigger wheel away from the coil by the spinning motion of the bob weights. It's very, very technical. Vacuum advance. There's in here, there's a little diaphragm, and basically what this diaphragm does, it takes a vacuum from the inlet manifold, and it pulls the whole plate out. It does exactly what the bob weights do, but at very low RPMs, very much. A lot of early cars did not have vacuum advance on the distributor. They had bob weights, but they didn't have a vacuum advance. Any 40s, 50s, 60s cars, well, probably pre-60s, won't have a vacuum advance. So their idle won't be as smooth. It was merely to do with making it a little bit more smooth at lower RPMs. But at high RPMs, the bob weights take effect. And that's how the timing is advanced in this particular. I know there's a lot of things to think about there, but that's the basic way I can speak in plain English, put it that way. But if you think about the timing in your car as a clock, now an ECU does all that today. You have a knock sensor that will detect if the timing at any particular moment is too advanced and there's a bit of a knocking from the engine. It's like a microphone on the side of the engine block, and the ECU will hear it and think, oh, right, we need to do something about this. We need to retard is what we call. Advanced ignition is when it goes forwards. Retarding is when it gets closer to 12 o'clock, basically. So advance is towards 11:30, and retard is back to 12 o'clock. That's the simplest way I can put it. But every engine is very different. Now, we are going to release. Okay. Now, inside here, we have the vacuum advance attached with this single screw. I'm going to take this out, actually. Again, it's the same size screw. It takes about 5 seconds. There's hardly any parts to this whatsoever. If I was dealing with a points distributor, my God, you'll be seeing more of that in the future, because I definitely think there's a video coming with that particular thing. But literally, just pull. I've got a feeling that it's still attached, actually. I don't want to pull that off. But basically, if I just pull this, see how it spins? Now this spins outwards, but basically that's what the diaphragm does. Obviously it doesn't move, but the diaphragm would do that. And I can demonstrate that. But basically inside here, it's interesting, it's made in the UK. We have these splines that go all the way around. Now these splines are driven by these. This is the bob weights. We have centrifugal weights. You see these springs in here? That's just basically to keep everything tensioned. But you've got bob weights in the bottom that when they go faster, they basically push out a little bit. And that forces these slots to actually move outwards, inwards, away from the coil. So the coil, you've got like a field coil on the side, which is where this blue connector is. Okay, I'm trying to show you as clear as possible. This is the trigger wheel on the inside, okay? And it will just keep spinning and spinning past that coil. And every time there's a little bit of a chink in the chain, a little bit of a gap, this will trigger the primary circuit in the coil. So we've got the primary, we've got the negative, okay? And these two are linked together. That's what we call the primary winding. The secondary winding is the negative to the big king lead connector in the top. That's the secondary circuit. When the primary circuit collapses, it basically collapses the earth. This has been building up and building up electricity in its windings, and then suddenly we've got a trigger from the coil. The field coil says, oh, there's been a gap in the wheel. There's a gap in the wheel. Oh dear, right, I need to tell the coil, you need to drop your earth. Bing, bing. Coil electricity drops in the primary circuit. This coil thinks, oh Christ, my earth has gone. Let's get rid of it. Down the earth, down the king lead, straight into there, span round by this to the individual cylinders, down all the H2 leads to spark plugs. There you go. Round of applause for Andrew for that one. And that's as simple as it gets. The centrifugal weights will do their there a bit as you're going down the road. I will give this a bit of a clean, but there's nothing to go wrong with these centrifugal weights. I think the biggest problem with distributors, there's a guy called Distributor Doctor, and he will replace your weights and your bob springs. Basically, the springs can get a bit tired. The posts at which the springs actually cling onto can wear out. So really, honestly, you can't expect a 40-year-old distributor to produce the same sort of efficiency as a brand new one. You just need to get a lot of things replaced, including the bush. Now, the thing that you've got to check for is the bush. Now, I can feel the tiniest bit of movement here. That doesn't matter with this. The problem with points ignition is there's something called the dwell angle. Now, you need to get your points ignition set up perfectly so the gap is correct. Because if your dwell angle, well, basically the dwell angle is the point at which the points are open and closed. So that is the time that this coil has to re-energize for the next burst, the next time that the earth collapses. Oh, we need to get rid of the electricity. If the points are not set up correctly, the points gap is too small, too large, the coil cannot re-energize enough. So the next burst of electricity will be so weak that your car is not going to run well. The spark, there's going to be a thin, weak spark. The car's not going to run right. The dwell angle is crucial, and that is affected entirely by the gap at that point. But it's also affected by another thing. If you have a distributor with a bearing, now that's forward and backwards. Forward and backwards doesn't matter. It's sideways movement, and there's a tiny bit of sideways movement. I can feel that. That sideways movement would be enough to affect the dwell angle, because effectively, if you've got play on that shaft, your points, the 2 points, are going to be moving closer and further away from each other as you're driving down the road. That is going to basically affect an inconsistent dwell angle, an inconsistent spark as you're going down the road. So it's critical. If your bush is playing up, send it to Distributor Doctor, and he'll put new bushes in your distributor. He knows what he's an expert. So the bushes and the dizzy, that's crucial on points. In this whole system takes it out. There won't be any need. There's no need for a dwell angle. There's no dwell angle measurement with this sort of solid state field coil, and there's actually nothing to go wrong. There really isn't. It's actually not electronic in some respects, but yeah, that's how it is. That is a distributor. The vacuum advance, as I say, is just to make the idle a little bit smoother. It will just pull this slightly out just to give a little bit of advancement. When we do the ignition timing, we have to plug that, because we cannot have the car advancing at all when the RPMs go up, because that's not how we do the timing. But I'm going to leave this here. Just put it back. I'm just going to give this body a bit of a clean off camera, and it's as simple as that. Now, the next thing that I'm just going to shove all this out the way is this alternator. Okay, now, I have actually been doing some work on this alternator. Now, as you can see, with a little bit of that overspray here and there, I've just painted the pulley up. Now, the first thing you need to be aware of with alternators, 2 problems. There are actually 3 problems, actually. The diodes can go, but you can't really help that. Number 1, bearing though. The 2 main problems that I've seen on alternators down the years are 2 things. Bearings. Is the bearing good? Yeah, that sounds fine. It doesn't sound graunchy or rough. I do apologise for the chainsawing going out in the background. But yeah, that's fine. And that's why I painted it, because it's absolutely fine. It's good to have a little bit of a paint. Now, on the back side is the cover. Now, the cover on this, well, it's actually just splinding like that. So take the cover off, and we can see all the gubbins in the backside. Now I'm just going to hold it up for you. Now, you may notice that we've got a bit of a problem. There are a couple of bolts that hold the regulator in. I've already checked. This is the voltage regulator. This is the second problem. This is what you change. If your car is not charging or overcharging, this regulator's gone. Now I've just checked this out. I can get a new one for £7, so I might as well get a new one. But I had to cut the bolt off because, well, hopefully I haven't damaged this regulator because I'll just keep it as a spare. But yeah, it's one of the bolts didn't want to come out at all. They're tiny little things, and there's nothing to them. Now, I've got to be honest with you, I don't really need to change this. If this works, it will be fine in situ because it's still got 2 bolts to hold it in. The problem you encounter, I have given all this a bit of a clean here, but really it's just the main electrics. There's some sort of, I think that's some sort of suppressor. I don't know what that is, maybe to do with radio suppression, but there's really not much to see on this alternator at all. So I'll be brief about this. We have got 732. It's a weird size. That's why I needed this one. The bolts on this are a 732. They're rubbish. And even a 732 seems to be slipping on these. No wonder I couldn't get the other one out. And all you do is... Oh, by the way, guys, this alternator is a Lucas A127 alternator. Very widely available. A lot of cars have one of these. Look, I found the sticker. I gave it a bit of a clean up on the casing. Look at that. What a nice sticker that is. So it's used on a lot of British cars. A lot. So I wouldn't struggle to get another one. But the point is, I don't want another one because the bearing is good. And all you have to do is change the regulator and they are freely available. You just prise it up. We want to see what the brushes are like. Right, oh, we got this electrical connection. Just gotta take this off. It does say Lucas stamped on the body. There we go. Just a little white connector there, electrical connection, and we can see inside. It looks really good in there. The commutator has got some wear on it, but as we can see here, this is what we want to see. Brushes. Now the specification is 5mm minimum. Now I can say we've got about 9mm there. I'm pretty sure. Now one is longer than the other. Strangely enough, there's actually more wear on the inner side than the outer. That's quite normal with alternators. I found that with replacing the brushes in my Focus Mark 1 starter motor. The inner one always wears more than the outer one for some reason. But even so, there's about 8mm on that one and about 9 to 10 on that one. Perfectly within spec. This can either go back on or be replaced. So I'll decide what to do with that because, as I say, I may just want to replace it as such, but I don't think there's any need to. It's usually the brushes that go on these. Although sometimes they can overcharge. So ignore this bolt here, but basically we've got where it presses onto the commutator in there. It looks fine. Just give it a bit of a clean. Just give it a bit of an electrical contact clean. And there really isn't much more to this. So I'm probably going to replace this, but this is what I wanted to check. It's probably a good one, but nevertheless, I can get another one for £7. You know, they're mass-produced items, and some of them made in China, some of them are not. Probably I'd like to keep, this is probably the original one, so ideally probably keep it because it's probably high quality. So there you go, guys, alternators and distributors. And I'll just show you some of the paintwork that has been drying since I've been waffling on in here. I've only put one coat of that diamond white on. Oh yes, my God, that looks really, really good. There's a few areas I need to go over. My masking's, yeah, I've done no masking. I've put a bit up there as well. Fantastic. It's all coming together slowly. Anyway, take care, guys. Here's to the next time. Ruby red wheel alloy wheel cleaner doing its job. Absolutely disgusting. Black, turned purple the moment I did it. Complete. Not the finest job in the world, but it's actually better than I thought. Now we've just got to do the whole car in that now. Some fresh stone chip. You can tell where I've painted. So it's got to go off. Fantastic. Get in there.